Okay, y'all. Part two of loving your husbands well. So, if you listened, hopefully, you listened to part one, where we explain kind of the season of life we're in and how we're talking about loving our husbands in our personal season of being stay at home moms, also working out of the home as well, but how we are trying and striving every day to love our husbands in a positive, joyful manner.
Mhm.
And so we touched on a lot it even including, like, throwing mom in there as well because,
Mhm.
big part of it is the mom that we're being by
Yeah.
staying home, but
Mhm.
we did kinda, at the end of part 1, kinda talked about how trying not to keep score in your marriage,
Mhm.
right? Trying not no tit for tat or, "You got to play golf, so I need to go get a facial," or, "You got to" I mean,
Yeah.
none of that kinda tit
Yeah.
for tat stuff. Something I wanted to bring in kind of goes along with that is not comparing your husband, right?
Yeah. Or
Your
your
husband is
marriage.
your
Yeah.
husband. Yeah, your marriage is your marriage. You don't want it to look like someone else's. You don't want
No.
your husband to look like someone else's because let's be honest, no one truly knows what's going on in someone's home or in someone's marriage.
Right.
Social media, as much as we are on social media for Keep Life and as much as we are doing this and this business being on social media, sharing our lives on social media, it's a draining place. It can be
Mhm.
a negative place. It can bring your joy down because comparison, like
Absolutely.
Mikey got written in
Comparison,
his
yeah.
office. Yep.
Comparison is the thief of joy.
Yep. Comparison is the thief of joy. So this
Mhm.
goes along with every topic we can talk about on Keep Life Chatty, but one of them for sure is comparing your husband,
Mhm.
comparing your
Mhm.
marriage. Don't do it.
Yeah.
Don't do it. You
Mm-mm.
know, um, just because someone else's husband is, I don't know, I'm trying to think of an example. Because someone else's husband is
Makes more
take.
money than your husband or
Oh yeah,
whatever.
there you
You know what
go.
I mean?
Yeah,
Something as simple as
yeah.
that makes more money than your husband. You're getting typically when you're comparing, it's because you're getting a 2% glimpse of
Mhm,
their life through social media. And I
mhm.
think that's where that comparison
Yeah,
comes from.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, so I just like with that, like comparing your husband, God created your husband for you. Like God created you for your husband. And there's no question to, compare the person that he is or what your marriage is. As long as you're putting the work in,
Mhm.
you can make your marriage the best marriage you possibly can.
Yeah. If you're gonna compare anything, maybe compare, like, inside your own marriage of, at this
Yeah.
time, we were so happy. What were we doing different? Or,
There you
like,
go. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
compare that instead.
How do we go back there? How do we
Yeah.
evolve from this? Or, let
Mhm,
comparison work for you in that fact versus against you in other ways.
mhm. Yeah, 100%.
And I think part of to play on that, one of the biggest things is not bashing your husband.
Yeah, yeah.
That's a big one. That's a big one within like groups of friends, girls' nights, but also social media. I mean, I've seen some videos out there that are,
Mhm,
pretty
yeah.
condescending to husbands and things like that. So just not bashing your husband, not taking part in that. Gonna bring out another Bible verse real quick.
Do it.
But Proverbs 31, 10 to 12, 10 through 12. A wife of noble character who can find, she is worth far more than rubies. Her husband has full confidence in her and lacks nothing of value. She brings him good, not harm, all the days of her life. Like striving to talk about the good of your husband, like not shying away from talking about good things about your husband, but
Mhm.
like pushing away the negativity, like not allowing those negative conversations to happen.
Yeah.
Because if you sit around with a group of girls bashing your husbands, you're going to come home
Yes.
with that stuff in your head. And
Mm,
that's where the enemy's going to come in. And that's where he's going to work through your marriage and tearing y'all apart or whatever. You know what I mean?
yep.
So just keeping like the positivity there, but the bashing away.
Yeah, I love that.
And
That's
I
so
think there's
true.
a difference in bashing and venting because God does call
Yeah.
us to have wise counsel, like to have everybody should have somebody in their life that they can go to, maybe a marriage that they look up to.
Mhm.
Um, you know, maybe it's just a person that you need to go to for personal things. Like God does call us to have wise counsel that we're able to go to. But there's a difference in seeking wise counsel and to I don't even want to say vent a little bit, but to try to navigate certain situations
Mhm.
that we don't know, we've never faced before and we don't know how,
'Cause it's
then
beneficial too
yeah,
to have that outside view sometimes depending on
yeah.
what it is, and someone would be like, "Well,"
Hmm.
someone's gonna see it in another light, but in a
Especially
positive
somebody that
way.
knows you, knows your
Yeah,
heart. You know what I mean?
yeah, and for guidance and navigating, like you
Hmm.
said, instead of, like, bashing and be like, "Well, you should
Hmm.
tell him this, and you
Yeah.
should," you know?
Hmm.
No, and again, every marriage, every husband, every wife, you, me, Kelsey, we're very different. Our
Yeah,
husbands are very
absolutely.
different. We're gonna handle things differently, navigate things differently, and that's okay.
But I think that's where, like, we're good at bringing perspective to each other.
Mhm.
Like, I've been quick to pick up the phone and call you and be like, "Hey, am I overreacting here? Like, kind of help me walk through this because you're so much like Mikey. So,
Yeah.
like, you can bring his perspective to me,
Mhm.
in a little bit different manner.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah.
I just think
Absolutely.
I think that's important to have, but it's very important to keep the bashing
Yep, I think
out of
that's
your
great.
marriage.
Yeah, don't compare, don't
Mm.
bash,
Yep. Yep.
Um, and again, this is just us talking from relationships that are, I mean, we have good marriages, right? I
Mhm.
mean, I would not,
Yeah.
again, they're not
They're
perfect
not
by any
perfect.
mean, but
No.
overall, we've had a good 10 years and
We're
we're
striving for way more than that, you know?
striving for forever, eternity. And we're striving for to always try to better our marriage and not get to the point to where it is that hard to come back from, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
Positive and joyful. So yeah, and then, again, we already talked about like not keeping score and
Mhm.
tit for tat, not keeping score, comparing your husband to someone else's husband too. Well, their husband
Yeah.
did this.
Mhm.
Don't ever do that.
No.
Don't ever compare whatever he said. Well, his wife
Or
did this.
even
Like,
like, well, he goes and plays golf every weekend and then she goes and does this every weekend.
mhm,
So why aren't we doing like no, like
yeah.
figure out what works for you, find the balance that works for
Don't be scared
you.
to ask too. Like
Yeah.
if, don't hold it in and be like, he gets to go do this on Saturday and I get to do nothing. Well, then next week say, hey, not, you don't have to say, can I? I'm bad about that. Can
Mhm.
I go do this? Like he's my dad.
Right.
It's not
We're
like
not
that,
asking permission, but like,
kinda. I mean, like making sure that they're okay with it and
okay, but
they
doesn't Brandon give you
usually
the
are.
same? But doesn't
Yeah.
Brandon give you the same respect? It's not like Mikey just wakes up and is like, "Hey, peace out, I'm
Yeah.
gone."
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
"Hey, what do we have going on this weekend?
Hmm.
Okay, I'd love to, do this."
Hmm.
Or and I will say like I am like a couple years ahead of you in the kid factor.
Yeah.
Um so, 2 years ago had Mikey said I'm going to go duck hunting,
Yeah.
3 weekends a month, I would have been like, excuse me." But
Yeah.
he knew, like, that was not the season for it. This year, he got to last year, he started going back again, and then this year, he joined a club, and he got to go as much as he wanted, and
Yeah.
honestly, like, my kids are at the age where I was like, "Cool, like, we're gonna miss you, but I hope you go and have so much fun. Me and the
Mhm.
kids are gonna do this weekend, and then, you'll be back on Sunday, and we're gonna be excited to see you." Where when they were, 1 and 3, I would have been like,
Mhm.
"Wait, no, take me with you." Like,
Mhm.
it's just a different
And
season.
it's so easy to get on that train of saying, it's so they're so lucky. They can just say, I'm going to do this and they go do
Yeah.
it.
Mhm.
And I have those moments of having that mindset of being like on Saturday when Brandon's going out to like the land, he loves to go out there and shoot, or he loves to go.
Mhm.
I mean, sometimes he's just cutting limbs and cutting drills out there and stuff. But
Yeah.
at the same point, or at the same time, he still is going to get up and be like, what do you need from me today?
Mhm.
Do you,
That's that
and
checking in.
most of the
Yeah.
time, do you want me to take Blake in? Do you want me to take Lila? Or he'll ask them if they want to go
Mhm.
too sometimes.
Yeah.
Or he knows. I mean, he'll know that we get home from lunch or church on Sunday, and sometimes he'll say, I'm gonna take the girls out there and they'll play with their cousins and stuff too. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay. And I'll
Yeah.
have like a couple hours at home,
Yeah.
or he'll take Lake in while Lila's napping. And so I kind of do get time to myself, and then me and Lila will go out there later.
Mhm.
Those just little pockets of time. The same for them. You have to understand that we still get some pockets of time being
Yeah, throughout
home,
the day.
right?
Mhm.
Throughout the day for sure. To where, especially when your kids are old enough to where they're in school more, you
Mhm.
have that pocket of time
You do.
sometimes,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
you get it. But when they're at work all day every day, they get up, they go to work. They then well, Mikey works from home mostly, but even traveling, like everything is about
Yeah.
work, right? And
Mhm.
then they come home and it's sometimes into chaos that we try
Mhm.
to avoid and try to keep the house calm, but sometimes it's chaos to where most of the week, or okay, here's an example, right? Brandon will get home from work sometimes and he'll pull up and he's sitting out in his truck and he's on the phone. Well, we've kind of established this rule, like, don't come in this house unless you're ready to give your attention to the girls because they're going to drive you crazy if you don't, right?
Yeah.
You can't go back
Mhm.
out and get on the phone. You
Mm-mm.
can't be like
Like
walking, sitting here on the phone because they want him, they want his
mhm.
attention. Sometimes he'll pull up and he's sitting out in his truck and he's on the phone. It might just be with a friend because he's only talked work all day. And so he's
Mhm.
talked to someone on the way home, or
Mhm.
it's still with work. Um,
Yeah.
and I will always have those moments. I'm like, what's he doing? Like, come on in,
Yeah.
we want to see him kind of thing. And I'm like, no, like he needs
He
his
needs a
time
minute.
too.
Yeah, because
Because
how
even
long
though
are
he
we on the
hasn't been,
phone, you know?
I know, but he hasn't been home all day to do, I hate to say do whatever you want, but kind of. I mean,
Kind of,
even
yeah.
with your kids in tow,
Mhm.
you still have a little bit more freedom in that aspect of
Yeah.
doing something fun, right?
Mhm.
Go to the
Yeah.
playground. If it's a nice day, you can go to the zoo with
Mhm.
your kids.
Mhm.
It's still fun stuff, even though it's not personal you time by
Exactly.
yourself.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, just even back to communicating that, when they get their time of duck hunting or whatever, maybe sit down and be like, hey, I really want to go do this.
Mhm.
Can I do it this weekend or this
Yeah.
day? And
Yeah. But
communicating that
that's
instead of
the
holding a grudge.
communication. Yeah. Like don't
Hmm.
let that's a way to communicate it. You're not saying, "Hey, since you went duck hunting, I get to do this."
Yeah.
It's more so just like, "Hey, 3 weekends from now or whatever." Like I do believe making personal time for you is a priority, but
It
it's got to
is.
be a priority for them too. So you've
Hmm.
just got to open that line of communication. You've got to check in with each other. You've got to have the conversations because they are not mind readers. And if
No.
you sit back and think that they're going to read your mind, you're going to
Mm.
begin resenting them. And resentment in a marriage is one of the quickest ways to destroy your marriage.
Yeah.
Some of our darkest seasons of our marriage were full of resentment
Yeah.
and unspoken resentment that the other one didn't even know. But, I'm just angry at him because I've got this underlying resentment that he doesn't even know about. So that's where like that communication, that checking in, um, making your needs known, but in just like a kind way.
Yeah.
You know what
Cause
I
that's,
mean?
that's where I was for sure. I talked about this in part one, but after having Lakin, like, I just thought he could read my mind and know what I needed from him
Mhm.
with a newborn. And
Yeah.
no, so now I
Yeah.
try to tell new moms that all the time too. I'm like, one thing I wish I would have done different was just communicate, like, hey, can you make me a bottle? Or hey,
Mhm.
can you go, I don't know, go grab me a diaper instead of just knowing
Mhm.
that,
Yeah.
I need one
Yeah.
right now. Communicating that as a new mom is huge. And that was probably, I
Mhm.
would say, where my biggest resentment was in our marriage was after having a kid
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
feeling like I was doing it all. But
Yeah.
it was just as much on me as it was on
Yeah.
him for not
Mhm.
communicating it
Yeah.
and telling him how I felt, right?
That's where so we went to just a little side note, a marriage conference back in February at our church. And it was an amazing weekend, as cheesy as it is, a life-changing conference for us. We have found new ways to communicate with each other, new ways of hearing each other, understanding. It was just great. And one thing that they have had us do, it's called a Fanos, and it's something that they said, they do a couple times a week. And I wouldn't say Mikey and I do it weekly, but we've definitely done it since the marriage conference. And it's basically like a quick check-in. And I'm gonna try to remember it off the top of my head. So express your F feelings, A affirm the other person, N express a need that you have that week, O own something that you did wrong or something
Mm-hmm.
that you could do better, and then S schedule spiritual. I don't know what that, but basically like hitting all of those topics. Just
Yeah.
quickly, right off the bat, one person goes, that person listens, and then the other person goes, and that person listens. And you have hit so many key things
Mm-hmm.
doing that. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, and we've done it. I was one that I was like, "Well, we need to do it every Sunday night." And Mikey's like, "Okay, come on." He's like, "I like Mondays better because then we know, our week's going. I know what work's gonna look like." And I'm like, "Okay, cool. That's a compromise right there. Like, I want to do it weekly. You just don't want to do it on Sunday nights. You're good with doing it on Mondays or whatever." But it's also something where like if you're haven't done it, or you did it early in the week, but now Fridays come and you're feeling a little rocky, and something's going on, you can do it in a matter of like 30 seconds.
Yeah.
And it's
It's a good
about
way of, like,
listening.
kinda
Yeah.
putting your thoughts out
Yeah.
instead of feeling like you're being ugly,
Yeah,
you're actually
exactly.
just laying it out there
Yeah. But
in a
you're
structured way.
in a very structured way, yeah. And
Mm,
in a very like what's the word I'm looking for? Like positive way. But what's the word
mhm.
that I'm looking for? I don't know. It'll
Yeah,
come to me.
it'll come to you. But
But
yeah, I love
I
that.
don't know, it's just been cool. So it was just like tools like that. It doesn't even have to be that. Just like find some tools that work for you and that
Mhm.
help you with that communication.
I know a lot of couples too that have made it a priority. They do, like, weekly date nights or,
I wish we
you
have
know,
not.
uh
We're not good at
or
date
at least
nights.
a monthly date night or
Mhm.
something. A lot of that is just having someone that tries to keep your kids obviously and go, even if it's for. I mean, there's been times when Brandon has texted me in the middle of the day and he'll say, "Hey, can you ask your mom to come sit with the kids for a couple hours and let's go to dinner?" And like,
Brandon's so good about that.
I know he needs time
Yeah.
because that's just how he is. He needs time to just sit,
Mhm.
me and him sometimes.
Yeah.
And so I'm gonna try to make that work. Also
Mhm.
knowing that what the other needs, right? And you
Mhm.
have to communicate that to your husband as well. You have to
Mhm.
tell them what you need. What is something that you need regularly?
Mhm.
Is it
Yeah.
just time to yourself
Mhm.
regularly? Or is it time with him regularly?
Mhm.
Or is it family time, like going somewhere
Mhm.
fun with the kids,
Yeah.
once a week? Figure out what that one thing that kind of you need regularly. And for Brandon, it's definitely a date night. Like he loves just me and him to go
Mhm.
and have dinner. So we
Yeah.
do try to
Y'all
do
are good
that.
about that.
Um, but everybody's different too
Mhm.
of what they need. So
Yeah. We're not great about like the weekly date nights, or even the monthly ones. Like we try, but we're with his travel schedule, like, he travels so much during the week
hmm
that come weekends, he wants to be with the kids
yeah,
as a
yeah.
family. So we try to make time, on the weekends after we put them to bed, staying up and hanging out, watching a
But
show
that's what I
together,
mean. That's what
whatever.
works
Yeah.
for y'all,
That's what this but we're
and what
also
you
good
need.
about we travel at least once a year together, like a pretty
Y'all
big
do
trip.
travel
And
good.
sometimes
Yeah.
like we try to get a couple weekends where,
Mhm.
we either let our moms keep the kids and stay here or go riding for the
I feel
weekend
like
or
that's what
whatever.
I want. Like, that's what Brandon's okay with just the random date
The date
nights
night.
because he's always, he's a typical one of those men that's like money you spent on vacations just gone. I'm like,
Mhm.
man, but I love a vacation, even if it
Yeah.
is a night or two away.
Yeah.
My birthday's coming up. I'm like, can we just go to like Oxford for a night and just I like to get maybe it's just because where I'm home so much.
I think that's probably what it is because Mikey's not as
Yeah.
much he doesn't have the travel bug as much as I do.
Yeah,
Like
maybe it's
mine,
just being home. It's
I
like, I wanna
think
go
so.
somewhere else
Something
and,
different, a change of
yeah,
scenery. Yeah.
have
Well,
someone
he gets to
give me
travel so
my
much with
food.
work. Like, we're not even gonna talk about where he is right now. We're just not gonna talk about it.
Yeah, let's not talk about it. Well,
But he
he
gets to
is in
travel so much
Saint
with work.
Lucia.
But the thing I don't know. Which he worked real hard to earn this trip. I'm just real bitter
Yeah.
that they didn't take the spouses, so that's okay.
Yeah, they
But
should have.
that's not his
It's
fault.
rude.
That's not his fault. So,
It's not his fault.
but one thing is if your husband does travel for work or has nice dinners out and,
Mhm,
with clients and things like that, it is easy to be like, ugh, like that's not fair. You got to go
mhm.
do this. But my husband is the first one to tell me, like, yeah, I got to go eat at this restaurant, but I was working. Like, do you know how
Yeah,
much more I would
I know.
wish you would have been there with
Mhm.
me? Like,
Yeah.
and if I get that way, he is so quick to affirm the fact that, like, I want you there. Like,
Mhm. Yeah.
so, just not
Seeing
allowing
the big
yourself.
picture.
Yeah, seeing the
Sometimes you
big
only
picture.
wanna see, like, a glimpse of it,
Mhm.
but seeing the big picture for sure
Yeah.
can make you feel better.
Yeah.
Um Yeah, so I think that's awesome. And then one of the other things we didn't get to touch on in part one was allowing your husband to be dad.
Yeah. You're
Um,
really good at
I
this. I
love
have to say that Leah is like, I strive to be more like you with this because I am so quick to, like, no, I got it. Don't
Yeah.
yell at him or whatever, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? But you're very, very good at it.
Can I say that it's not that it's easy? One thing I feel like this kind of goes hand in hand, so I'm just gonna go with it.
Okay.
One thing I've always done through years of dating and trying to find my husband, I guess, was I've always compared everyone to my dad.
Yeah. Mhm.
I've always strived to have someone kind of like my dad and even a little like my brother. Always wanted somebody that could fix things. Always wanted somebody that knew about cars. As
Mhm.
simple
Yeah.
and dumb as that is, but
It's a big part of your
that's
life.
my family, right?
Mhm.
Um, I always wanted someone. I mean, just I was really really bad about comparing guys to my dad, and that's one thing that I've loved about Brandon is I don't know, he kind of reminded me of little ways
Yeah,
of
I
that
can see
with
that.
my dad. They're very different. They're very different, but also similar
Mhm.
in some ways too. And one way is what they believe,
Yeah.
and how they feel.
Mhm.
And Brandon's like that when it comes to fathering our kids. Like if he's disciplining them or if he's getting onto them for something, maybe sometimes I might not fully agree,
Mhm.
but I that's his role, that's his
That
job
is his
too,
that's actually what God
and
calls them to do. God
mhm,
calls the dads to I mean, I don't know the verse, but they are a stronger disciplinary than the moms are.
well, and Brandon's such a good girl dad though too, because
Yeah.
he's also very patient with them,
Mhm.
surprisingly, because he's
Yeah.
not a super patient person, but he's pretty patient with them. I think it's
Yeah.
mainly because our first Lakin is him made over. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, you could not get more similar, except she's a girl and he's a
Yeah.
boy. But other than that, they look alike, they act alike, identical. Um, so I think a lot of it the patience that comes with that is, he understands why she acts the way she acts
Yeah.
because he is the same person.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I know because we've communicated this in the past and he has
Mhm.
communicated it with me that he wants to be the one to parent. Like, when other people step in and, like, tell like, I'm calling my parents out here, my in-laws out here, but if they step in and, like, get on to our kids, that's something that Brandon's always like, "I can parent my kids."
Yeah.
Like, he feels that
And that's he
way.
feels strongly about that,
And so
yeah.
same with me. If he's parenting our children, I'm gonna let him.
Mhm.
Um, and I don't know. I feel like that's just kinda come easy for me for some reason, but I also again, maybe part of it is because 'cause I'm not as emotional as you are
Yeah.
with
Oh,
things
I
too.
know. Yeah.
I do not that you don't believe in discipline, but I do believe in discipline with our
Yeah.
kids, and sometimes I'm not as strong with it
That's my
with
thing.
them.
I'm just not as strong with the discipline as Mikey is.
Yeah, I mean, I try to be, but they're just better at it. They're better at being stern, and they get their attention
But they don't have
more.
to yell. They don't have to like I
Yeah.
feel like so many times I have to just be like, "Ah!"
Mhm.
Where they have a tone. But I mean, I
Uh-huh.
remember it with my dad.
Yeah.
Like I could give my mom crap all day long and my dad walks in and he didn't even have to say a word. He had a look that he gave me.
Uh-huh. Or your
And
mom just had to mention your dad, or
yeah,
I'm
and
gonna
I'm
call
just
your
like,
dad right there. Like,
exactly.
I
Yeah.
laugh
And
at
so you
my
don't
sister-in-law, she does that with my brother's kids all the time. "I'm gonna call your dad," and they immediately, like
yeah. And
they're like,
which
"Oh, okay."
you've got to be careful with because like sometimes you can go so far that they're, you don't want
Yeah.
them to always have to be that role, but it's definitely something that I,
Mhm.
keep in my
But it's
back
good
pocket.
too.
It
I
is.
mean,
It's a healthy
I
respect.
truly believe kids need to have a little fear of their parents, right? You
Yeah.
turn from your parents need to I saw this actually on social media the other day of where you go from you fear your parents as a child in a healthy way. You fear your
Mhm.
parents as a child to them being your friend,
Mhm.
in the long run. And I feel like
Yeah.
that's healthy. I feel like that's
Well, we're
good.
supposed to have a healthy fear for God,
Yeah.
and he's our
Yeah.
father,
Yeah.
So I think we're supposed to discipline like Christ and,
Yeah.
Christ like
Mhm.
discipline and all that. So I think as long as you are coming from a place of love with every act of discipline,
Yeah.
then I think you build a healthy fear with your children. And I just
Yep.
think dads are better at that than moms.
They are. So let them do
But
it.
I will say I haven't been great at it because Hadley's just like me and then she's incredibly emotional and incredibly sensitive.
Yeah, so y'all kinda have, like,
Um,
the opposite
the
role of how
opposite.
we have it,
So
yeah.
I've been very quick to like step in when he's attempting to discipline. But I've realized that and I've taken a step back and I've
Mhm.
been able to just be like just the other day, I I guess it was Monday morning. They were acting nuts and not a calm morning in this house like I'm used to. And so I just was to having to tell them 3 and 4 times. All he had to do was walk out of his office and he said, "Kids, I have heard your mother repeat herself 3 times
Mm,
with every single thing that she's told you to do this morning. What is going on? Like this needs to stop. She needs to tell you one time, and that's that."
mhm,
And I mean, it was fixed. He didn't yell. He had his tone, and he supported me. Like
mhm.
he was like,
Supporting each other.
yeah. And I just think like that's important when it comes to disciplining your kids is being a united front, letting
Mhm,
them see that you are a team, a husband and wife before you are mom and dad.
mhm.
And I think to be that you have to allow your husband
And,
to
it it goes both ways. There's been plenty of times where Al will discipline them, then they go run to him,
yeah, of
He
course.
disciplines them, they come run to me.
Yeah.
They're getting both sides, and in that
Yeah.
moment when your husband is being dad, that's what they need in the moment,
Yeah.
right? And
Mhm.
you can still be there to console afterwards if
Yeah.
they need
Well,
that,
because there's
especially when they're
some
little, but
days, like you talked about this in part one, when they walk in and they can just see like a look on your
Mhm,
face and they just know it's been a day. When Mikey walks in and sees that I'm like at my wit's end,
mhm.
he doesn't jump on that train with me to be like,
Yep.
you know, l-
Balance each other in
get it.
that
Yeah,
way.
he doesn't get on to him immediately. He comes in and he's like, okay, Kelsey's clearly, it's been a rough day.
Flustered.
She needs a minute to breathe. So I'm going to be the patient and calm one and I'm going to take the kids outside and I'm going to
Mhm,
give her a minute versus coming in, feeding off my energy and just
mhm,
like,
mhm.
lashing out at them or whatever.
Yeah,
Just
the same
balancing each
way as
other
I
out.
feel like they allow us to be mom, we
Yeah.
just gotta do a good job at allowing them to be
Allowing them to be
dad
dad.
too.
For sure. For
Yeah,
sure. Yeah.
um, so yeah, this
Yeah.
was fun.
I know. One thing we had down that we didn't talk about, and so
Oh,
this
yeah,
kind of circles back, is surrounding your marriage with other healthy marriages that pour into you as a couple.
yeah,
That is something that I think super important. Not to say that like, you're not gonna have friends that are single and you're not gonna have friends that are going through rough patches and you're not gonna have friends like that's life. Like that,
mhm,
and you've got to be there for your people, you've got to love your people
yep.
well, and you've got to do that.
So,
But I
yeah,
think
love them well how you would want them to love you well if you needed that.
absolutely, yeah.
Mhm,
But I think having those few other couples in your life that you can kind of look up to and
mhm,
um kind of, pull positive things from them and allow them to you know, pour into you and kind of just be there to walk this road with you. Like
mhm,
God is so big on community and like we all do need a community and I think that goes along with our marriage too. Like having that group of friends that lift you up versus, kind of pulling you down.
yeah, yep.
So,
I love that. It's very
mhm.
true.
So,
But I guess that's a
yeah,
wrap for
that's all we
part
had.
2. That's
Mhm.
what we got. Okay,
Yeah.
well, this was fun. Again, Keep Life Chatty is gonna be all things, right? We're gonna be talking
Yep.
about, we introduced ourselves, we talked about morning routine, then we switched to loving your husbands well, so we're all over the place
We're gonna be
here.
all over the place.
And, but that's just kinda where we're at with it,
Mhm.
and we feel like, again, in this season of life, you're gonna hear us say that over and over and over because that's what it's about, is living in
Mhm.
your season, finding the joy in your season, and overall, that's what we wanna do. So find joy in your role as a wife, find joy in your husband's role as your husband,
Mhm.
and support him as much as you can, and open communication. So we
Yeah.
hope this was helpful.
Or just even
And
enjoyable to listen to.
I know, right?
Right?
We hope it's a little bit of something, right?
Something,
A little
yeah.
bit of happiness for you,
Yeah.
but we will see y'all next time. Again, always reach out. Let us know
Yeah.
if there's any topic that you want us to discuss, or something that
Mhm.
you feel like, I mean, we're not here to like counsel you and help you with your struggles. We just want you to
No,
realize that
because
we're normal just like you.
yeah.
And these are probably conversations you would have with your friend as well. And you
Yeah.
are now part of our friendship. So
Yeah, for sure.
we're here to just keep life chatty. But we
Yeah.
will see y'all next week.
Yep. Sounds good.
Bye.
Bye, y'all.